Rape crisis advocacy is not a gig you get into lightly, especially as a man. It doesn't require a master's degree, but it also isn't a read this pamphlet, we'll call you when we need you kind of volunteer position. Even in the emergency room, the rape crisis advocate is almost always the only one who knows how to handle the situation appropriately. The training is intense and it's frightening and still nowhere near enough to prepare you for the first time that you walk into an emergency room and introduce yourself to someone whose life has just been irrevocably and involuntarily changed. Nothing, not even experience, can prepare you for the 10th time or the 20th. Every client will go through a cycle of betrayal, feelings of crushing shame and self-blame, and they're going to do it right there in the room with you, sometimes several times. Everyone will just want to go home, curl up in comfortable clothes, and quietly find their solitary way out of the hollow place they're in. 1 in 3 women in America go through this. Believe it or not, so do at least 1 in 12 men. We usually think of rapists as knife-wielding strangers, but the reality is that 3/4 of all rapes are perpetrated by someone the victim knows. Most rapes are never reported. I know all about not telling anyone. It took me 20 years to come to terms with being raped myself. I know the cost of not reporting it. I wasn't just pretty good as an advocate. I was very good. I didn't expect that at all. I expected to be rejected by my clients simply because I'm a man, and a large man at that. I've been told that I can be pretty imposing, even scary. I prefer to think of it as presence. I remember one client who called me a week after she had been drugged and raped by a childhood friend. She asked me to sit with her as she went through the interview with the detective. She was a raw nerve, but she answered all those incredibly difficult questions with astonishing grace and strength. During the interview, her fiancé came in. He was a sailor and he'd been at sea, so he had no idea what had happened to his bride-to-be. I sat with them as she told him about what happened. He didn't say a word while she spoke. When she finished, well, I watched his face move from worry to rage to love. Then he took her in his arms and he said simply, I love you. We'll get through this. And then he looked at me. His life had been changed irrevocably too. And his eyes filled with questions. I was totally lost. Her, I could relate to. I carry the same shame in my soul. Him, I had no answers for. After that, I left the advocacy program. Just as I had been at 13, I was sure that no one would understand what I'd just experienced, what I was ashamed and afraid of. I went back to a comfortable, familiar place. Self-imposed, solitary. I got past it. At least I thought I did. A couple of years later, a woman I loved told me in a tear-choked little girl voice that she had been drugged and beaten and raped. As I listened to her, I wanted to scoop her up like a little girl, to hold her until she felt better. I wanted to do something, anything, to take away her pain. Instead, I kind of did what I was trained to do. I answered her questions. I gave her phone numbers and addresses and recommendations. I told her that none of it was her fault, that everything was going to be okay. We'll get through this, I said. And those words took me back to that afternoon in my client's living room. And now the questions in her fiance's eyes were my questions. What does she need from me? Am I man enough to give it to her? Am I allowed to have my own feelings here? What if my feelings aren't what she needs? What if my feelings hurt her more? Could I have done more to protect her? Will she ever want to make love again? And if she does, will it remind her of him? Will someone please give me a map to show me the way through this? Is that what she needs? What does she need? Am I man enough to give it to her? I couldn't think of any answers, just that swirl of impossible questions that made me angry. My anger boiled into bloodlust. I wanted to find this guy. I wanted to rip off his head and put it on a spike with a sign that said, rapist. I wanted to eat his liver and feel the blood run down my throat. Who was he? She didn't even know. Just some guy she talked to in a bar when she was in Seattle on business. If I love her, I must not allow myself to feel this. I must be her stable element. Until she feels better, I must hold space for her and allow myself to feel nothing but what she needs me to feel. As a survivor and an advocate, I know that in this moment, she has no idea what she needs. So I become empty too. But it isn't my emptiness, it's hers. I'm hollow by proxy. She came to me because she loved me and because she trusted me to know what she should do. I got so wrapped up in my own emotions that I almost forgot to be her advocate. In her little girl voice, she declined to be helped. Not wanting to go to the ER, not wanting to be poked and prodded, not wanting to tell her story over and over again to strangers or to anybody. Been there, done that. I had to let her decide for herself Now, I know that rape is not a two-sided, but a three-sided thing, a prism in reverse through which darkness sucks the colors out of two lives. Just around the corner from the rapist and the raped is the loved one. The loved one is always there. Past, present, future, always. You may be wondering whatever happened to those feelings I set aside in favor of hers. Well, here I am, telling my story, filling the hollowness with my voice.